Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing the team that helped me climb up to 3347 ELO in the Competitors Cup. Now, I've restricted myself to only playing Competitors Cup this past week in preparation for casting the Pokemon Go World Championships this weekend. Now, this team was never meant to be an ELO climber. I just wanted to have some fun, so I grabbed an anti-meta Pokemon in Gliscor. Gliscor can hit very hard with acrobatics, and with Sand Tomb, you can pull off some diabolical baits. Now, in my eyes, this is not a team that I recommend using if you care about your ELO, but I was, with some very careful gameplay, actually able to go decently positive. Now, one quick note before we hop into today's video, my analytics tell me that a bunch of people who watch the videos every day are not subscribed to the channel, so do a favor for me, quick double check, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, leave a like on the video, and without further ado, let's take a look at Gliscor hitting 3347 ELO. We move to game number 1, leading Gliscor into Shadow Fortress. This is a very positive lead. Whether it's Bug Bite or Volt Switch, Gliscor is going to be resisting their fast move. And this trainer is on Volt Switch and they're staying in. If they're staying in, then Gliscor must be a core breaker for their team, so I'm able to go for the Sand Tomb bait and grab a shield away from my opponent. Even if I didn't think they were core broken, Fortress users, they love to shield the first, because then they can apply the Rock Tomb debuffs. So their defense is lowered, my attack is lowered, we're basically just doing normal damage, but now I can full send the acrobatics, and my opponent double shields. There's clearly something in the back that is terrified of Gliscor, so I save the Gliscor and make a catch onto my Shadow Quagsire. Quagsire more than happy to take a Sand Tomb, and to my shock, my opponent stays in and throws another move. They really can't do any damage to the Quagsire. They double debuff me with Sand Tomb, and out comes Gastrodon. Gastrodon, not going to have a particularly fun time here. Even though I'm double debuffed, I have just enough HP on the Quagsire to make back-to-back Aqua Tails. Aqua Tail is going to be putting them pretty low, and then I should be able to pivot into the Gliscor. I throw a wing attack, wait a turn to force a CMP tie, Sand Tomb to the Body Slam. Sand Tomb is going to connect, but I really did not want them to save the energy and pivot out. Now they're locked into the Body Slam, they're going to undercharge, snipe down with a Carbink, but it's all over. In comes Empoleon, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. We move to game number 2, picking up a bit of an awkward lead Gliscor into Shadow Quagsire. Even though Shadow Quagsire does have super effective damage with Aqua Tail, regular Gliscor does not get one shot here, so I'm just going to be no shielding as they land the Aqua Tail and continuing to overfarm. A bait here would be risky, but I'm hoping my opponent will put up the shield, so I go for the Sand Tomb, I get the shield, and they're going to immediately fire back with the Aqua Tail. Due to the fact that the defense is debuffed, honestly these wing attacks are going to really start to add up as well. I try for the CMP tie, but once again my opponent is not going to let that happen, as they're going to go for the overfarm. A catch here could be massive. I farm up and I'm able to get the catch onto Empoleon. Realistically, this team doesn't really have a designated save switch. I'm more so just going for catches on whatever Pokemon in the back is going to be resisting the move that my opponent is throwing. If they're staying in to throw, they're on Mud Bomb, so I will put up the shield, just for my opponent to pivot out and send in Licky Licky. Licky Licky is in a pretty rough spot here. I'm on curve to make back-to-back Hydro Cannons before they can even make a move. And that's going to remove almost their entire health bar. While it's not going to take the knockout, they're forced to undertap the Shadow Ball, and this should set up a pretty diabolical farm down for Quagsire. I did debate bringing in the Gliscor, but the Gliscor is so low, I can get a 4 Mudshot head start on the Quagsire, and it's going to be a Tinkaton in the back. Now, one thing this team does very well is shutting down Tinkaton. Arguably, Gliscor doesn't actually have an amazing matchup in a Tinkaton, despite the fact that I have a type advantage, just because Sand Tomb doesn't really do a lot of damage. But the back 2 Pokemon shut down Tinkaton, so if my opponent has a Tinkaton anywhere on their team, I'm probably going to be in a pretty good spot. They connect with Gigaton Hammer, but it's just simply not going to matter. I can take the knockout with Aqua Tail, and my opponent can never overfarm enough on the Quagsire to win the game. Their Quagsire gets brought back into mine, I'm able to outpace, make it to the Aqua Tail, and that's going to be all she wrote. Aqua Tail connects, Quagsire falls, and even despite a bit of an awkward lead, catching out of that lead matchup put us in a really good spot. We have a very neutral lead in the next match, Gliscor into Shadow Sableye. Another one of these lead matchups where it is extremely bait dependent. I'm going to farm up past the acrobatics, go for the Sand Tomb bait. Sand Tomb is going to be no shielded. What a call from my opponent. That's an incredible play. Foul play will do quite a lot of damage, and my opponent is going to win charge attack priority over the Gliscor. Unfortunately, not landing that acrobatics is just absolutely catastrophic, and I'm going to bring in Empoleon. My opponent pivots out, in comes Shadow Ninetales. Ninetales able to outpace and get back the turn they lost by switching. I no-shield the Weather Ball, click on the Hydro Cannon, and after they put up the shield, I'm just going to take shield advantage Shadow Quagsire versus the world. Normally, Quagsire actually has a very big problem against an energy advantage Shadow Cancer Ninetales, so having the shield advantage here is absolutely critical. My opponent still has that Sableye lurking, but the Sableye is already taking quite a lot of damage in this game. I fire off the Aqua Tail, my opponent tries to go for the CMP tie, but I know that I'm going to need residual energy on the Quag, so I'm not going to throw right away. Instead, I'm just going to shield a bunch of Weather Ball baits, but finally fire off the Aqua Tail and knock out the Ninetales. This should put me in a spot where I can easily outpace the Sableye, but that's not the Sableye, it's going to be a Shadow Celio getting brought in here. Actually, sorry, the non-Shadow Celio, I stand corrected. The Shadow would have actually gotten KO'd there, and we actually end up simultaneously switching Empoleon into Sableye. But my Empoleon is able to win charge attack priority over the Sableye. Hydro Cannon will knock out, and even though there's so much energy on the Celio, Celio can just never farm down, and that's going to be game-winning for me. Because Celio is forced to fire off the Body Slam, they can now get the Surf into the Shadow Quagsire. If this was the Shadow Celio like I had mentioned, this Surf would knock out, but it's not. It's the non-Shadow Celio. It has a bunch of extra bulk, but it does not have the damage. We survive the Surf, KO with the Aqua Tail, and win an incredibly close game. We move to the next match, Gliscor into Shadow Talonflame. Now, this is a Pokemon that you really don't see too much anymore. Gliscor, pretty awkward for this team, but the good news for me is that Acrobatics does one-shot at Talonflame, so they're going to have to put up the shield. So I go for the Sand Tomb bait, but they no-shield. How on earth did they call that bait? And that might just be game losing on the spot. I'm able to get the Catch of the Fly onto Empoleon, but now out comes a very angry Panda Bear. Pangoro hits the field. I can fire off the Drill Peck. Drill Peck is going to be shielded. Can Pangoro get the farm down here? It's going to be close, and they can. They get the full farm down, and unfortunately, the consequences of having that bait called, that's just such an insane bait call because Acrobatics does one-shot there, but they make the call of a lifetime, and that's going to win them this game. Oh, that is just so incredibly catastrophic for me. They try for a catch, bring in the Talonflame, but they're one off the fly, so I actually can't even overfarm that much. Instead, I just fire off the Aqua Tail, knock out the Talon. They can bring back in the Pangoro, because the Pangoro, even though it's at a shield deficit, is absolutely loaded on energy. It's going to be a CMP tie here. They're back-to-back Night Slashes. I put up the shield as they full send the close combat. I really have to hope that Quagsire is going to be able to win the ones versus whatever's in the back. Aqua Tail is going to connect. It's his Hisuian Electrode. There was never a chance, and we will concede the match. We move to the next game, Gliscor into another Shadow Talonflame. The last Shadow Talonflame ended up calling the bait, and I just lost the game. So you know what? We're just going for it. They should always shield here because they do get one shot. I fire off the Acrobatics. They no shield. They just get one shot. And there are consequences to calling baits. Well, there weren't consequences last game, but there are consequences this game. We have learned our lesson. We full send the Acrobatics. And I'm glad I'm able to demonstrate why that's such an incredibly risky no-shield. Because the Talonflame, it just gets KO'd. My opponent goes for a Body Slam onto the Gliscor, which is caught onto the Empoleon, and the fact that they didn't Shadow Ball at the Gliscor tells me they're probably on Earthquake. They're putting up shields. They easily have enough for the Quake. I cannot afford to let this land. Even though I do still have a pretty healthy Quagsire in the back and a decent amount of HP on the Gliscor, I do not want to let this Empoleon go. So I'm just going to be double shielding. There's the Earthquake. In the back is Aegislash, and I make a mistake. I should have fired off the Hydro Cannon before pivoting out here, because my opponent's goal is just to tank energy and farm up to 100. Because Aegislash is obviously going to be able to tank Aqua Tails for days, firing off the Hydro Cannon before switching would have given me some very valuable chip damage. But now, because of that misplay, I may not have another chance to fire off that move. Aegislash is going to fire off energy. Here comes the form change. Will this Shadow Ball one-shot? Shadow Ball lands, Quag survives, the Aqua Tail is banked, and a combo play with the move on Empoleon. This Empoleon Hydro will force them back into the shield form. They can fire off energy to go back into the blade form, but I should be in a pretty okay position. I have a move loaded on the Quagsire, and my Gliscor is not too far off a move. So I can bring in the Gliscor, make it to the Sand Tomb. My opponent makes a very nice catch onto Licky Licky, and I will go for a full undercharge. The full undercharge is going to get me 2 extra wing attacks, and now back in comes the Aegislash. I throw 2, get the catch onto the Quagsire. Did we need this catch to win this game? No, but my opponent made a very nice catch, and one good catch deserves another, so we catch back onto that Quagsire. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We get a terrible lead in the next match, Gliscor into Shadow Aegislash. I'm going to pivot out, save switching into the Quagsire, and to my shock, my opponent stays in. I didn't want to throw the Aqua Tail there to get the turn back because I was very confident they were going to pivot out into a water type. And there it is, speak of the devil, in comes Shadow Feraligatr. I go straight for the Stone Edge, Feraligatr is going to no shield, and suddenly, this actually feels like a pretty okay spot to be in. I can fire off this Aqua Tail, my opponent is going to have to put up the shield, and even though they're going to get the full farm down, I was able to get a shield advantage out of a pretty rough mid game. Unfortunately, Gliscor is just going to have to get a one-shot here. Gliscor doesn't really have any play into a Sandslash, so I no-shield. Hydro Cannon does a ton of damage and a Metal Sound down with Empoleon. My opponent brings back in the Sandslash, and maybe there's actually a chance that I can win this game. I know Hydro Cannon will not take the knockout quite yet, so there's not really a point in throwing it. I just shield up the Drill Run and then fire off the Hydro. I'm hoping that with the Metal Sound damage, Hydro will knock out the Aegislash. My opponent will put up the shield. I'm going to fire off the Hydro as soon as I get it, but there's a switch and a catch onto Azumarill. Even though Empoleon does have a pretty significant typing advantage here, unfortunately, Empoleon just doesn't really do any damage onto Azumarill. Azumarill is insanely bulky. One way back in this game could be a catch attempt. I fire off the Drill Peck. I'm going to do one and the catch, but they throw on alignment. Nice call. They are ensuring that I'm never able to get that catch. Bad news for me, Empoleon will not be able to knock out with the Drill Peck. Azumarill will get pretty low, but Azumarill does now have the Ice Beam. I'm at the back-to-back, Drill Peck lands, they pivot out, looking for the catch as in comes Sandslash. Hydro Cannon will take the knockout, they do have the Ice Beam. Do I go for the catch? Do they throw the move? I just stay in. They overfarm, watching for the catch, but I don't go for it. They call my bluff, I call it right back, and we escape with a win. Picking up a pretty rough lead in the next match, leading Gliscor into Greninja. I try for a catch onto Empoleon, but my opponent shows great patience holding onto their energy, and they will stay in the matchup to connect with the Night Slash. Night Slash lands, thank goodness no Night Slash boost. Even though Night Slash boost is only one stage nowadays, it's still never something you want to see on a Pokemon that has a massive attack stat like Greninja's. Greninja will fire off another Night Slash, Empoleon will be able to hold on here, and they can't even get a farm down. If they try for the farm down, I would have been able to make a move, so they're forced to throw all their energy. Honestly, this works out pretty nicely. I get a sick farm down with the Gliscor, and my opponent is going to think about it. What are they going to bring in here? They still haven't shown any of their other Pokemon. They bring in a Jumpluff, and this is going to get interesting. They catch the Acrobatics on a Quagsire, but now they've shown me their entire team. Acrobatics still hits for very nice damage. I can farm up a ton of energy and then bring in the Quag. Quag is more than happy to take an Earthquake, and from here, I should just be able to close out the game with the Gliscor. I have a ton of energy on the Gliscor and 2 shields, and there's not really a way for my opponent to beat that. I overfarm massively, playing to the CMP tie. Aqua Tail into the Quagsire is going to be shielded, and I'm never going to shield. I don't need to shield the Quagsire to win the game, so I end up letting it go just for my opponent to reveal they actually went for a Stone Edge bait. I overfarm, watching for that catch. There it is. In comes the Jumpluff, but I'm able to react in time and connect with the Stone Edge. Stone Edge lands. Back in comes the Gliscor, so deadly with this stored energy, and I can full send Acrobatics. Acrobatics is going to land. Jumpluff falls. Back in comes the Quagsire, and my opponent will concede the match. We pick up a very rough lead in the next match, Gliscor into Seaking. I'm going to have to try and go for an Icy Wind catch here. Icy Wind is double super effective. I try for the catch, but my opponent is just far too patient. They're able to hold the energy, and now they're going to fire off energy at the Quagsire after overfarming. They do debuff the Quagsire with Icy Wind, now probably going to go for the harder hitting Drill Run, and Quag is in a bit of a rough spot here. I will make the Stone Edge. My opponent opts out and makes a beautiful catch on a Tinkaton. Now, Tinkaton is a Pokemon that I do extremely well against on this team, but unfortunately, I have a debuffed Quag. They caught a Stone Edge, but the good news for me is I'm able to make a last-second Aqua Tail. That's genuinely very valuable damage, and now I bring in the Empoleon just to get one turn bring-in lag. Oh my goodness, playing on Competitors Cup, a good reminder of the faults of the old system. My opponent does get the Bulldoze debuff, but I'm able to get a catch. I save Empoleon, and I catch the Bulldoze onto Gliscor. Bulldoze going to be doing nothing. Unfortunately, my opponent does get another Bulldoze debuff, as in comes their final Pokemon, which is Quick Attack Diggersby. Somehow, despite how catastrophic the lead was, we're not out of it yet, because Gliscor is very strong here. My defense has been lowered, which means these quick attacks are adding up, and the Fire Punch will put me deep into the red. I try and go for the CMP tie, my opponent not going to let that happen. Acrobatics is going to connect, and Diggersby falls. I bring in Empoleon as they send in the Seaking, and I'm going to be firing off Drill Peck. My opponent ends up no shielding, but now they're in very real danger of just getting Metal Sounded down. I'm going to be shielding, and I'm fully committing to the fast move pressure. My opponent Icy Winds, they do not want to get farmed. They bring in the Tinkaton. Tinkaton, I can't farm down. I am going to have to throw energy here. So I fire off Hydro Cannon. Tinkaton will put up the shield. I have Hydro number 2, and that's going to be on the CMP tie. Empoleon shrugging a little bit there, but we already caught one Bulldoze on a Gliscor. You know what? Let's catch a second one. So I put up the shield. We're exactly on curve Hydro to the Bulldoze. So I'm going to farm up, switch into the Gliscor, and for the second time this game, catch a Bulldoze on a Gliscor. Bulldoze is going to land. In comes Seaking, but I can just fire off the Hydro right away. The only threat in this game is the Seaking. Once the Seaking falls, there's no energy on the Tinkaton. Tinkaton knows they can never outpace Empoleon, and somehow we're able to escape with a win. great lead in the final match, Gliscor into Fortress, but my opponent safe switches Dondozo, which is a very big problem. This team is very, very soft into Dondozo. Even though I have Empoleon, which does wall off Dondozo's energy, you're going to see this matchup is not at all comfortable for Empoleon. Dondozo, if it's very high rank, can very easily survive 2 drill packs. I can never farm down, and the waterfall plus surf damage genuinely adds up quite a bit. I'm now with the back-to-back drill packs, and I'm a little bit worried that my opponent will throw an alignment. So I go for the CMP tie, but they catch a drill pack onto Ninetales. We're getting a spam phone call mid-battle. Suddenly, it's all going wrong. We declined the spam phone call, but they caught a drill pack onto Kanto Ninetales. In hindsight, I should have just thrown the Hydro. Hydro probably would have KO'd the Dondozo, but I have so much respect for Dondozo's bulk that in the moment, I really did not want to throw a Hydro and have it not knock out. I really thought long and hard about no shielding that first move from Ninetales because every Ninetales ends up double baiting Quagsire, but I shield at the last second and I do end up shielding 2 Weather Balls. However, I should have an ability to try and catch out of this matchup. So I'm going to farm up, switch into the Empoleon, and it's a simultaneous switch, Empoleon into Dondozo. That Dondozo energy could have been a huge problem for my Gliscor later in the game, but the fact that I was able to get the catch, or well, not even get the catch, but get the simultaneous switch in a very favorable position should actually just win it for me, because I can take the knockout there as Aqua Tail KOs Dondozo, their energy is lost, and back in comes the Bug Bite Fortress. Fortress will take some pretty considerable damage from Aqua Tail, and now I just commit to the Stone Edge to force my opponent to throw. And once they've thrown, I should just be able to outpace them with the Gliscor and take home the win. My opponent does have a ton of energy on the Ninetales, but keep in mind the Ninetales no shield and a drill pack, and they had to take so many mud shots. Acrobatics is going to land, back in comes the Ninetales. Ninetales makes a last second move, but they just simply cannot do enough damage. Energy Ball connects, Gliscor survives, and we clinch the 5-0 set. And that 5-0 set is going to be enough to get us up to 3347 ELO, which at the time of recording should be right around top 15 in the world, I would assume. Top 15, top 20 in the world. But either way, a pretty monster climb. As I mentioned at the start, this is a team that definitely should never have worked, and it's not a team that I would recommend using if you care about your ELO. This team, I feel like in a lot of circumstances, I really had to try and outplay opponents to get wins, which ended up resulting in some very fun games, but probably doesn't mean that its success is particularly repeatable. Initially, this team was put together because I wanted to learn the matchups of Shadow Quagsire. I spent the past week running a bunch of Pokemon that I normally don't run in the Competitors Cup because it's really important to me to learn the matchups and to learn the damage ranges for any Pokemon that I could see on screen while casting the Pokemon Go World Championships. I want to have that understanding of the matchups and damage ranges, so when I make callouts in my casting, I can provide the viewers with as accurate of information as possible. So in wanting to brush up on my Quagsire matchups, I decided, you know what, I've run a lot of meta this week, let's put something fun on the team in Gliscor and then round out the team with a strong meta option in Empoleon. Gliscor, it was definitely fun. There were some games where it really got to pop off, but towards the middle and end of the video, you really started to see Gliscor losing a massive amount of leads. We were able to fight back in a lot of those games and still manage to emerge victorious, but it was definitely a really significant uphill climb. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. One important note before I hop into all my normal thank yous is that I have recorded videos. So in my absence, while I'm in San Francisco, while I am casting the Pokemon Go World Championships, there will still be daily videos and I think close to daily shorts every day in my absence. So the good news is while I'm gone, obviously there's going to be no streams, but there will still be daily content here on the HomeSliceHenry channel. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed watching today's video, please do leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel is so appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.